Representatives from Washington and representatives from the Taliban signed a peace agreement in the Qatari capital, which aims to end 18 years of conflict in Afghanistan. Turkey strikes Syrian regime targets to avenge its soldiers killed in Idlib. Tensions have sent thousands of migrants to Turkey's borders with Europe. And as concerns grow about the spread of the coronavirus, South Korea, Italy and Iran emerge as major hotspots. Here in France are holding crisis talks as 16 new cases are announced. Welcome back to the France 24 Newsroom in Paris. I'm Tom Burgess-Wilson. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First, delegations from Washington and the Taliban have just signed a landmark deal in the Qatari capital Doha today, which it's hoped will pave the way for thousands of US troops to withdraw from Afghanistan in exchange for guarantees from the Taliban. Well, President Donald Trump urged the Afghan people to embrace the chance for a new future, saying that this deal could end what's been an 18-year-long conflict. Well, the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is there in Doha witnessing the signing of that accord. Here's what he had to say.
Over the past 7 days, violence levels have reached their lowest point in the last 4 years. U.S. and Afghan forces responded to the reduced enemy attacks by also respecting peace. It was not perfect, but the Taliban demonstrated, even if only for a week, that when they have the will to be peaceful, they can be.
The US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo speaking there. Well, let's cross the Doha now and speak to France 24's Chloé Doma, who has been following events there at the signing ceremony. Chloé, what's the latest you've got for us?
Well, here in Doha, the United States and the Taliban have just signed the peace deal. The delegations are actually still walking out of the conference room as we speak. Washington has committed to pull out U.S. Troops in exchange for guarantees from the Taliban that Afghanistan will no longer be used as a base by terrorist groups looking to launch attacks against the West. Now, there are currently a little over 12,000 U.S. troops stationed in Afghanistan, and if all goes as planned, the pullout could begin rather shortly. It's a matter of weeks or a matter of months, but according to the Americans, it is now all in the hands of the Taliban. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo addressed the audience earlier. He said that the U.S. would calibrate the pace of their withdrawal to the Taliban's actions on the ground. The deal will mean nothing without concrete actions. Now, the head of the Taliban delegation, Abdul Ghani Baradar, spoke right after this. He said his people were committed to the agreement and looking forward to a renewed peace process in Afghanistan.
OK, thank you very much indeed for that update. From Doha, Chloé Doma. Thank you. Turkey said today that its forces have destroyed a chemical warfare facility in Syria during the course of the night. The facility, which was located 13 kilometers south of Aleppo, was one of what Turkish officials called regime targets, which they struck after the deaths of 37 soldiers during the course of these last 48 hours, all killed by the Russian-backed Syrian regime in Idlib province. Well, these events have raised tensions between Ankara and Moscow. France 24's Shona Bhattacharya is on the border between Turkey and Syria, and I asked her what Turkey's next moves might be.
Well, the Turkish president gave a televised address a few hours ago in which he did not specify Turkey's military intentions in the coming days. But given the list of recent military achievements that he gave, it looks like Turkey is not going anywhere. Recep Tayyip Erdogan says that among the hundreds of Syrian regime targets that were hit, 7 chemical facilities in all were targeted. 2,100 Syrian soldiers were also neutralized, according to the Turkish president. Recep Tayyip Erdogan justified Turkey's presence in Syria, saying that Turkey was there at the request of the Syrian people, and that if Turkey were to leave the parts of Syria in which it is now present, that terrorist groups, supposedly the Kurdish forces and specifically the YPG, would return to those areas, terrorize the population, and pose a national security threat to Turkey itself.
Shona Bhattacharya reporting there. Now, campaigning has wrapped up in Israel as the country prepares to head to the polls once again on Monday. The last 2 electoral showdowns have both ended in deadlock, but even the latest opinion polls suggest a tie between Benjamin Netanyahu and his challenger Benny Gantz. France 24's Nick Rushworth has the details.
Israel goes into its third election in a year, with polls suggesting the country's political stalemate will continue. The vote pitches the centre-left Arab bloc of Benny Gantz against the right-wing ultra-Orthodox bloc of Benjamin Netanyahu.
What I'm seeing is that there is electricity in the Likud. Electricity. We are going to win.
Netanyahu campaigned saying his main rival, former General Benny Gantz, is too soft on Iran and too conciliatory towards the Palestinians. Gantz, he says, can only advance on the back of an alliance of the main Arab-majority parties. As the campaign ended, Netanyahu pledged to build new settler homes and annex Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank and the area's Jordan Valley to shore up support among hardline nationalists. Gantz focused on Netanyahu's trial for corruption, which is to take place 2 weeks after the vote. After a bitter campaign, he ruled out any grand coalition.
Netanyahu, you lost it, and you're unworthy of being prime minister a day longer. I will not sit with you.
The joint Arab List coalition, angry at the Trump peace plan for the Middle East, is hoping for a record Arab-Israeli turnout to get enough seats to oust the incumbent.
Our support will topple Netanyahu, the extremists and the settlers. We will win out over the godfather of the deal of the century.
Netanyahu's flagged up that deal in his recent trips to Washington and Moscow to say he should stay on. Signs, though, point to a rerun, a fourth election, and continued political deadlock in Israel.
Now, more than 2,900 people have so far died from the coronavirus, or the COVID-19, which has infected 85,000 people across the globe. The majority of the infections have been in mainland China, but there are now more daily cases being recorded elsewhere, with South Korea, Iran and Italy emerging as major hotspots. Well, officials in Italy have just announced that Sunday's football match between top teams Juventus and Inter Milan, together with 4 other Serie A matches, have been called off. That's with regard to fears over the coronavirus. Well, here in France, ministers gathered today for crisis talks to discuss ways to tackle the virus. This as 16 new cases are announced, bringing the total number of known infections in France to date to 73. Well, let's speak now to France 24's Doug Herbert, who's standing by for us in central Paris, where the meeting of ministers was held a little earlier. Doug, what's come out of that meeting? Just how worried do you get the impression the authorities are here?
Definitely right now at what's called stage 2 of the virus alert. The virus is
Doug, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I was just asking you just what came out of that meeting of ministers here in Paris.
Yes, well, right now France is very much.
Okay, I'm afraid we seem to have a little bit of an audio issue there, but as I was saying, 16 new cases have been announced here in France. We've also heard from the French authorities that gatherings of more than 5,000 people have been banned. France also announcing that the Paris half marathon is being cancelled. So some measures have been announced in the last half hour or so. Let's get this update on the global situation with regard to the coronavirus. Here's France 24's Fraser Jackson.
With tens of millions of people still under lockdown in its worst-hit cities, the coronavirus continues to spread in China.
There are 427 newly diagnosed cases of the virus and 47 new deaths from the virus, of which 45 are in Hubei, and 1 case in Beijing and 1 in Henan.
Despite these numbers, health officials believe that infections appear to be slowing, proof they say that the unprecedented quarantine measures put in place are working. For the first time, the number of people recovered from the COVID-19 illness has surpassed the number of remaining confirmed cases. On Friday, it was announced that China has sent a team to help fight the virus in the country with the second highest death rate, Iran. On Saturday, the Islamic Republic announced that out of around 600 confirmed cases, over 40 people had died of the illness. The government has dismissed reports that the true figure could be over 200. Several countries have suspended flights to Iran, with Australia now declaring it will bar all foreign travelers flying from Iran from entering the country. But the biggest spike is in South Korea. On Saturday, the government announced 813 new cases, bringing the total number to over 3,000, the highest of any country outside of China. The US has reported 62 cases, including its fourth case of infection from unknown origin, indicating that the virus is spreading within the community. In all, more than 50 countries have been infected worldwide. The World Health Organization has raised its global risk assessment of the new coronavirus to its highest level.
Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching. Do stay tuned to France 24.